Now on the political beat, saving lives when people are at their lowest, where no one wants to be.
If we save one person's life, it's worth it.
The Charlotte woman dedicating her life to preventing suicide. One call, one text, one sign, one conversation at a time.
But the thing is, suicide is preventable.
You're watching The Political Beat. Thank you for joining us this Sunday for The Political Beat. I'm Joe Bruno. We're starting off our show with a difficult but important topic, suicide. Many of us have struggled with our mental health from day to day in a dark place. Fonda Bryant found herself contemplating taking her own life nearly 30 years ago, but a loved one stopped her. And now she's dedicated to helping others through some of the toughest times in their life. I met up with Fonda to talk about one of her efforts in Charlotte to save lives. But before we move on, I want to warn you, some of our conversation may be tough to hear. 12 stories high in the sky is where too many people have taken their last step.
They know that when they jump, that's it. It's no coming back from it. It's no waking up and saying, oh my God, I made a mistake. Once you go over that edge, that's it.
Fonda Bryant understands their pain.
I know how Twitch felt. I know how Chesley felt. I know how Kate Spade felt. I know how Anthony Bourdain felt. I know how they feel because we all feel in that moment the hopelessness, we feel worthless, and we feel like we're going to be in this pain for the rest of our lives. We know we're going to hurt family members. We know we're going to hurt friends, but that pain in that moment, it outweighs us jumping. It outweighs us shooting ourselves, hanging ourselves. It outweighs all of that. But the thing is, suicide is preventable, and if someone can come along and say, hey, let me help you get help, I'm here for you, it can make a big difference.
That difference maker in Fonda's life was Aunt Spanky. On Valentine's Day in 1995, Fonda called her to say she could have her shoes. Her aunt called back and asked if she was going to kill herself, and Fonda said yes. Her aunt went to a magistrate and had her niece involuntarily committed by a police officer.
When he put his hand on my shoulder, I scratched him. And when I scratched him, he grabbed me by the back of my neck, shook me extremely hard, and threw me in handcuffs like a criminal. I don't smoke, drink, or do drugs, but I was in crisis. And if that hadn't happened that day, and I know people who are watching this and say, man, that's a little extreme. But when somebody's suicidal, sometimes you have to be extreme. You got to do whatever it takes to save our lives.
As a now 28-year survivor, Fonda Bryant is on a mission to help people like how her aunt helped her. That's what brings us to the Center City Green parking garage, where she learned 6 people died by suicide in 4 years. She contacted the property manager and told him she wanted to help.
He said, well, we've only had a couple. I said, one is one too many. And I told him, I said, I'm an advocate, I'm a survivor, I want to change that.
She worked with the garage to post signs that look like this near stairways and elevators. The signs all have the same message: you're not alone, with phone numbers for people in crisis to call and text.
When you're struggling, you feel like you're by yourself. You're like, man, I'm by myself in this. No one understands. No one cares. But when you see you're not alone, it is such a powerful 3 words, because all of a sudden that goes off, I'm not alone. I'm not. And I just love that saying, you're not alone.
At first, the signs were small, and unless you took the elevator or stairs, odds are you missed them. But that has since changed. In 2020, a 17-year-old drove her car to the top floor of the parking deck, took off her shoes, and placed her phone and glasses on the ground. She jumped off the ledge. When Fonda found out, she knew the signs had to be bigger and more visible. One now sits where the 17-year-old took her life.
It would have startled her to a certain degree, but I think she'd have said, wait a minute. Somebody knows exactly how I feel in this moment. And I truly believe with being a teenager, she probably would have texted 741, text help, 741, 741.
In a lot of ways, the sign is in her honor. It's been more than 2 years since that happened. There have been no deaths by suicide at this garage.
We had no suicides, and I was just like, thank you. I just said thank you, because I was thanking God, and because He's the one who's really given me the strength to do this.
Because of Fonda, dozens, if not hundreds of signs can be found in parking decks like this one throughout Charlotte. And now there's a new effort to bring this prevention strategy statewide. A bill in the State House would set aside $500,000 for parking deck operators and local governments to install suicide prevention signs. They would be placed in garages that are at least 3 stories on each floor, in the elevator lobby, and stairwells. State lawmakers are calling the bill the Fonda Bryant Suicide Prevention Signage Act.
Had this bill named after me, it's kind of going to be my legacy that when I'm gone, long after I'm gone, what I did to stop suicides in parking decks will be saving lives long after I'm gone, and that is the best feeling in the world. If we save one person's life, it's worth it.
One person seeing the light, seeing the sign, seeing the words.
You're not alone.
Seeing as easily as words can hurt, they can heal. The Fonda Bryant Suicide Prevention Act is sponsored by Representative Carla Cunningham of North Charlotte. She is a longtime mental health advocate in the legislature. She says she was contacted by Bryant and worked with the Department of Health and Human Services on the bill.
Because we're in a state of mental health crisis in North Carolina and across the country, that just seeing that sign and it says you are not alone, and also helps remove some of the stigma, that more individuals will reach out, more individuals will pick up that phone and dial that 988 number. And if they just take a moment and breathe, we are definitely in crisis. So we need to probably be doing everything that we can.
Representative Cunningham is also working with Representative Donnie Lamberth of Winston-Salem on a $1 billion plan to boost mental health programs. Most of that funding would come from Medicaid expansion. It sets aside tens of millions of dollars for behavioral health urgent cares, a pilot program to take people to the hospital from psychiatric facilities, and funding for schools.
We are definitely in that space of, we know that we're in crisis in the mental health, behavioral health, substance use disorder. And so that's where we are. And we're going to try to tackle it and move forward as much as possible to get that financial aspect.
Whether it is for mental health or another healthcare issue, when it comes to getting help, you might have experienced this. You call dozens of doctors listed through your healthcare provider, but not getting any offices willing to take you as a patient. These are so-called ghost networks that are standing in the way of patients needing help. Mental health advocates and lawmakers are calling on Congress to do something about it.
What a ghost network is all about is essentially selling health coverage under false pretenses, because the providers who've been advertised aren't picking up the phone, they aren't taking patients.
Mental health advocates are asking Congress to hold healthcare providers accountable if they are using these ghost networks, and to create a federal system where patients can report ghost networks. The city of Charlotte has taken its own strides to address barriers to getting help in our community. The Smith Behavioral Health Urgent Care opened in March near the Bojangles Coliseum. It was funded in large part thanks to legendary Panthers wide receiver Steve Smith. Almost like an emergency room, you can walk in any time of day. It's for people experiencing a mental health crisis or in need of an intervention to prevent a crisis. And another facility is on the way in East Charlotte. Charlotte City Council voted in January to sell this building on Central Avenue to StarMed. StarMed says they plan to turn it into a pediatric and adolescent behavioral health center. The U.S. Surgeon General says the country is seeing an epidemic of people who are experiencing loneliness, and now he's laying out a new plan for communities and organizations. The recommendations call on governments, businesses, and community groups to increase social connection, in some cases pushing for more parks and libraries.
And what you're arriving at is really a recipe for loneliness and isolation. And so what we have to do right now is very intentionally rebuild the infrastructure for connection in our individual lives as well as in our communities.
Many cities and towns are pushing for more funding to help with mental health, but this kind of national strategy has never been put in place. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health, help is available. We have a list of resources broken down by county on our WSOC TV News app. Just look under our community tab. And if you need help right now, know that you are not alone. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Just call 988. We'll be right back.